Welcome, everyone, to Authors Bantering, the weekly podcast with myself and Ian M. Rogers. This week, I wanted to piggyback off what we talked about in the last video, which was about the hobbyist versus professional. Me and Ian were kind of going back and forth, and I was like, there's some aspects of being a professional writer versus hobbyist that have not really been discussed by us on here that I feel like need to be added on. And mainly this deals with financials, actually making a living as a writer. Obviously, if you're a hobbyist, you don't necessarily need to worry about that as much. The idea being that you don't view writing as some sort of income. But if you're looking to become a professional and make this, something sustainable, financials play a huge factor in it. And I think the biggest thing is, just the main thing is keeping a low overhead. Like, if you are going to be a professional writer and take seriously, you have to have a low overhead. The less amount of money that it takes to maintain your lifestyle, that means the less amount of work you have to do, the less amount of hours you have to do at a job. If you can do something part-time and live very meagerly versus doing something full-time, that's 20 extra hours. You're working only 40 hours full-time that you can put towards your writing. And so diminishing your overhead is the most important thing if you're a writer. It's extremely hard. We're doing this in 2023. God, economically things are near awful. But that's the biggest thing I think, is looking at keeping a low overhead and also becoming more familiar with other job avenues related to the writing field that don't necessarily rely upon just your books. Very few authors actually make a living solely off their books. A lot of them make it off additional income that's related to that field. But first, I'll kick it over to Ian, offer his thoughts, and we'll go through these points.
No, I really like your way of setting this up. I've preached about, just how powerful living frugally can be. The idea that you're not, buying the expensive cars or taking, 7 vacations a year or, living in a super nice, expensive place.
Yeah.
If you can figure out a way to make your monthly budget lower than the average person's, that's, more time essentially that you have to spend on your writing, on building your career, and less time that you're tied to a job potentially, especially if you work part-time and have flexibility in the amount of time that you actually can work is really, really important. I like what you said also, just different avenues for earning money as a writer or doing writing type things. So a little introduction. So I'm a writer editor. I do that full time. I don't have another day job now. And so what does that mean? So it means I earn income from my books, but it means I also earn money from freelance writing jobs, from doing copy editing, from doing writing coaching. I work with a lot of academic writers. I work with fiction writers too, but I work with both. I teach a class online, and I have income that comes in from all these different sources that are writing related. The idea that it's not strictly income from sales of a book, although that's a part of it, but it's income from things that I do that are peripheral to writing in some way, different from, say, when I was working in a greenhouse during the day and I had income from that, which was not writing related at all, but it was ways that I got income. So, when I talk about being a writer editor and, it's these ways that I can use my skills to bring in money. And I think that there's a lot of different things that writers can do to bring in money. I know you do coaching. A lot of people teach either full-time or part-time in some capacity. That's really popular. Again, doing editing in various capacities, I think is a really, really good opportunity for a lot of writers. There's a lot of opportunities there for people who are just getting started, especially if you're good with grammar and copy editing. I taught English as a second language for a long time, which was interesting to me just because of the mechanics of English and the grammar and, the way English is taught. It was a way to use my skills, but then also taught me more about sentence structure that I could use in my writing, was a really good way to build skills. So I think a lot of writers, are too focused on the idea like, oh, I have to earn a living solely based on my books, or I have to have another job and do, the whatever money I make from writing is just insubstantial. It's this all or nothing kind of mentality, which again, you should not have. There's plenty of other ways to earn money from doing writing type things.
Exactly. No, and I'm glad you were actually a good example of this, right? You don't just do the books, you actually, exactly right, do the editing, you do all these other teaching jobs as well. You do, as you said, like you've also done the Japan stuff as well, teaching overseas English language. Um, that's really what a writer is in a lot of ways. Like it's not just you waking up and getting money, residual income from just the royalties of your books. It's a lot of work within that. I myself, I mentioned my coaching, right? That is mostly a little side hobby. That is a very very small little thing that I do within my the
But it
scope of
is
my
a
business.
side
But
hobby that earns you money. So
it
it is a
does,
side
a little bit,
hustle instead
You're
of a
right,
better work,
a little bit, exactly, you're
That's
right.
real folding money. It's not just like 7 cents or
Oh yeah, yeah,
like pennies on the
exactly,
dollar.
exactly, yeah, yeah. But and my point though is that like not one avenue is ever going to probably produce enough income to basically sustain yourself as a writer, right? You need to have multiple avenues with that. And you, again, I think you've pretty much hit on all the major ones though, like editing, teaching. Those are the kind of the two main ones. I mean, outside of like doing like blog writing for freelance or
Yep.
like
Blog
script
writing,
writing,
I
if you
think
ever
is
go to like,
big. Ghost writing. I see a lot of ghost writing
yep, that
jobs
as
now.
well.
I've
Yep,
never ghost written anything. Those jobs can get really, really big, really fast, I
they
think.
can.
But I think for some people, they could be really, really good opportunities.
Yeah,
One, to build your credentials, and then two, those ghostwriting jobs can be pretty highly paid sometimes.
they can
So,
be.
again, depending on your skills and what your priorities are and what kind of time you have available, I myself would be a little bit worried about trying to work on my own fiction and then ghostwrite someone else's fiction or nonfiction at the same time.
Right.
Is a concern to me, but I think there's plenty of other people who can, turn it on and off like a switch.
Yep.
I've talked to writers who maybe, do their sort of freelancing writing or their ghost writing, 1 week, and then it's 1 week off, and then it's back to their fiction writing,
Yep.
and they'll kind of leapfrog in that way, schedule themselves
Bingo.
out that way. So it can be done. But...
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and exactly right. And yeah, ghostwriting would definitely be difficult. But yeah, understand too. It's like you hit it right there. The more extra work you take on for projects, it is going to take away from your writing. So don't if you think that 60 hours a week spent doing, all these different side projects, teaching, which involves, the classes, the editing, going over it, plus the editing work, plus if you do any individual coaching, plus say you do a ghostwriting job. If you're doing 50, 60 hours a week of work in that, right, versus you could just make the same amount of money doing 40 hours a week doing, just a more manual job. It's something to consider as well, right? It's not, if the original purpose is to give yourself more time to write, it's something to be aware of there. Your side jobs might take up more time. Yes. Maybe not, and you might be happier, doing 60 hours doing these other side things and not writing as much as opposed to doing the menial job for less hours, overall in your week, but just the work you hate. But things to consider with that.
I'm glad you brought up time, actually, because that is really, really important, I think. So again, just for my own example, so I certainly spend less than 40 hours a week doing editing and teaching work. Mm-hmm. Some weeks it's 20 hours, some weeks it's 35. Some weeks it does. If I'm really, really busy, I will set the writing aside and I will work on, paid editing job for 40 or 50 hours a week. Those weeks do happen. But for the most part, I do try and keep it much less than 40 hours. And one, I think a lot of freelancing offers the flexibility for that, which is really important. Yes. But then two, I like to build the writing into my week first and say, okay, I'm going to write 4 mornings a week, and that's going to be my writing time. And everything else is going to come after that. Everything else is literally after in the afternoon, after the writing is finished. And so I've had a lot of luck with structuring my days that way. And that allows me to pace myself on bigger jobs so I don't take on too much, kind of scheduling myself that way, making sure that the writing gets done. There's other ways to do it too. These ways have worked for me. Some people might have, sort of side gigs or hustles that do require them to be there a certain number of hours per week. Yep. In which case, that presents other challenges with writing around that.
Yep.
That being said, if that number is less than 40, I think you're in a really, really good place for being able to use the rest of that time for writing. Because again, there's a world of difference between a job that's 25 hours a week and a job that's 40 hours a week. You're going to be much more tired and have less energy for writing after the 40 hours a week job.
Absolutely. And I think you are kind of like the ideal sort of like really like you've kind of hit the jackpot, right? Like I think your scenario is what like a lot of people that are aspiring to be writers would look for, right? Like you said, very rarely working 40 hours a week, still making enough for your income though, and still able to do your creative projects. I mean that's you've kind of hit the jackpot there, man. But now with that,
Jackpot might be a little strong. I mean,
well,
I
we all
think,
want to get
or I
J.K.
mean, we're
Rowling
gonna be,
money,
gonna
but
be humble
like,
there. But I've
yeah,
got a lot of models. I think there's a lot of other writers and editors who have structured their careers more or less the way that I'm aiming mine.
yeah,
The idea that you have your side work, you have your writing, and you balance it in some way, and that's the way that you structure your weeks. And I think that once I realized that people in the real world, in the 2020s were actually doing that, and it wasn't this old school, I work a day job and I write on the side versus I'm a full-time writer and I get paid for that. Once I found out that there was other in-between models of that,
yeah.
those models felt really, really interesting to me.
Awesome. Very good, man. But now the thing too is, what's your overhead, right? I imagine your overhead. I mean, you probably live. I just knowing, I know you live frugally. I think you have a whole blog about it, right, on your website.
Let's talk about overhead. So again, I live throughout my life. I have lived in cheaper places. I don't have a nice condominium or anything like that. I drive a 2008 Toyota Corolla. Which has served me very well. It has very low mileage on it. I picked it up through a friend of a friend, who's looking to get rid of it. So I live modestly in that way. I don't take a lot of nice vacations, and I don't spend a lot of money on, I don't know, furniture or expensive hobbies that other people might spend their time on. So in this way, it's much more reasonable to live on that sort of 25 hours a week worth of income. And that the income numbers are going to be less than for other people, but again, I figured out ways to live on that, make it work, and feel good about it.
Perfect.
And that's an acquired set of skills. I think nobody learns that overnight. I think if somebody's looking to sort of downsize or transition to working this kind of life, you might think about, okay, what things do I not need to spend money on? What things are not important to me? What things am I willing to sacrifice in order to create a lower overhead for myself? And you might just try, writing out things on a list, things that are essential versus things that aren't essential, and kind of going from there. Make a budget for yourself. Having a budget can be really, really important for writers. Budgeting helped me not only save money, but realize how much I was actually spending on things. I realized, wait a minute, I only spent this much this month. This, I would imagine myself as maybe spending more than I actually was. But once I actually made a list of everything and added it up and got the total, I realized it was maybe less. And so the idea of living on a smaller income suddenly felt more reasonable, because I realized how much I was actually spending. And again, just tracking my expenses and how much I was spending really, really helped me with that.
That's awesome. Again, perfect example right there. Awesome. I mean, of just someone who's thought this thing out. And that's maybe the last big thing, which is you have to have a plan. You have to have a game. You can't just kind of wander your way into it. You have to have some sense of a game plan here going into this. And I think you've hit it. Like you've shown right there that thought about it. I put this ahead of me. I made writing a priority in my life, and I built things around it. And it's not easy by any means, but you've pulled it off, which is awesome.
Yeah, I think that in my case, I would pursue different freelancing opportunities, different editing opportunities, try and get my name out there, try and build contacts. A lot of the editing jobs I do, they're for people who, they don't have writing every week or every month to send me, but every 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 months they will, or once a year they will. They'll have something to send. And if you can build up enough things like that, then you can earn a pretty good income as an editor from that. But again, to go back to this idea of a plan, I think, again, just thinking about what you want and trying to find things that are similar to that. Maybe not exactly what you want right away, but just trying to move in that general direction can help you, sort of like fumbling in the dark, through the jungle. You got your flashlight and the flashlight shines a little bit ahead of you. And, you make your way in the world by just taking things one step at a time. I'm thinking back to E.L. Doctorow's quote about writing a novel is like driving at night. It's the headlights only go so far. But if you drive slow enough, stay within the headlights, you can write the novel. I think building an author career is exactly the same thing.
Exactly. And again, it's no different than any other like avenue of quote unquote, hustle culture, right? It's no different than the entrepreneur is trying to start a different business. It's the same thing. It's a business, and that's you have to have kind of that same attitude. And again, it's hard. I mean, and even let's go into this right now. Wants to take it seriously. Writing, it's probably one of the worst times alive in some respects. Like just in terms of economics. Like we have more. You have more opportunities to be noticed in some ways. I think in other ways, though, I think the opportunity has allowed a lot of congestion and made it very difficult for people to stand out when there's so many. But economically, it's tough. It's very, very hard right now. I mean, being able to pull this off is quite difficult. But if you make it your priority, I think it can be done.
Yes,
Yeah.
I agree with that. I think the comparison with other kinds of entrepreneurs is a really smart one.
Yeah.
I think that entrepreneurs, again, there's a lot to be said about taking opportunities, starting things, building up contacts,
Yeah.
presenting yourself in a certain way, and then being okay with earning a smaller amount of income to start, knowing that it could pay off later can be really, really important. And then just the idea of you as a writing professional offering something that people are going to want to pay for, whether it's a book or whether it's coaching or copy edits or knowledge that you can impart through teaching or ghostwriting or something else, that just thinking about it in that way can help you with this financial income bringing in aspect of it.
Yeah. Excellent. All right. So I hope you all have enjoyed that. I think it's a good follow-up. I think it's a good follow-up to what we just talked about here in last week's episode. If you did enjoy it, though, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And with that, as always, if you have any kind of topics you want to discuss, leave in the comments, and perhaps you can bring it up in a future episode. But with that, we'll be signing off here. And I'm Josh Bresslin. That's Ian M. Rogers. We will see you all next week.
Take it easy.